All right, good afternoon, everybody. It is Jay again, and I'm going to do a little video today on acclimating your fruit tree for Arizona. Now, I should have done this video a long time ago to probably save some folks some heartache on getting their trees transplanted from a nursery. It's not always as easy as you think. It's not as easy as bring tree home, plant tree. There's some factors that you're going to want to look into as far as bringing your fruit tree home and getting it acclimated to Arizona, getting it acclimated to your yard, getting it acclimated to the heat, the dry, the terrible weather that we have here in Arizona. So anytime you buy a plant from a nursery, so let's say you buy a plant from like Home Depot or Lowe's, okay, so most likely those plants have just come from California not too long ago. They don't keep their inventory very long, so I would say probably about 90 days is the longest they're going to have a fruit tree from Arizona before they clearance them off. So they all come from California as far as the big box stores go, and so as soon as they get here, they almost melt and fall off the truck because they're not used to Arizona weather and they're really not used to the summer. So you may buy them looking really nice in the springtime, and then summer comes around and they cook. So let's talk about the nurseries here too. So there's several nurseries here, tropical nurseries, stone fruit nurseries, apple nurseries. I've got sort of a nursery here, I guess you could call it, for sure. And so I'm used to this type of situation, and I'm used to the way that these plants grow, and I'm used to planting these in customers' yards. So I know exactly how they're going to react and perform, especially if they've come from my house. So anytime you're at a nursery, whether it be my nursery or anybody else's nursery, the first thing you're going to want to look for is how the position is of that tree in the yard. So where is it getting the most sunlight, basically? And you can kind of see that I've got these trees kind of tucked up under here in the shade so that the trunks of the tree and the pot are always in the shade for the most part. So they're not cooking. Everything that's going up into the sunlight, you see, is the leaves, and they're acclimated and they can take the full sun at that point as long as you've kind of cooled down the pot. Now you'll notice out here I've got some more that are out here in the full sun. All these pots are out in the full sun. Well, these trees are a little bit more acclimated to full sun and having the pot in the heat. I mean, you see there's citrus trees here, poincianas, pomegranates, some citrus, cactus, figs, apples, pomegranates. They can all take that full sun, and you can even see it as we get over here. It kind of drops into the shade again, and then it picks up with the tropicals again. So you see there's star fruits, mangoes, things like that back in there where the pots are shaded. You can see them back there, right? You can see the sun falling right in between them so that they're getting nice, perfect sun, or they're getting plenty of light, but they're not cooking. So how the plants are sitting at the nursery is very important. You want to mark which side is going to get the most sun. Well, the plants on this side are getting it on the front. So I would mark the pot in the front. I would mark the front of the pot. I would put a stick in there or take a Sharpie, and I would mark the front so that I know when I planted this plant in my yard, this is the face of the tree, and the face is always going to be in your yard, positioned where it's going to get the most sunlight striking on it. So if it's in the morning shade and it gets clipped off in the afternoon, you'd plant this side towards the morning sun. And if it's more in the afternoon sun, you'd point it more towards the afternoon sun, because that's the part that's going to get the most sun strike on the leaves. And this is how it's grown, and this is how it's acclimated. I can even show you, you see these lower branches, it grows these lower branches in because it's trying to shade the trunk in that upper canopy. I'll give you a really good example over here on these kaffir limes. So you see that these kaffir limes have shot up these little suckers, right, that come up from the base. Well, most people would have a tendency to break these off, cut these off, right? Well, I'm not going to, because it's the hottest part of the year, and I'm going to wait till it cools down, because what this tree has realized is it's realized that its trunk is out here cooking, and it grew these little shoots, shot up right here on the sun side to protect this side of the trunk from burning. Now, when it gets enough leaves and it gets enough foliage up at the top to cover itself, well, then maybe I'll take these off. But right now, it would mean more or less death to this tree, because I would cut these suckers off. It would expose the bark and the trunk that is currently shaded by itself, and then it cooks. So then we have to take these off, and then we have to wrap the trunk or paint the trunk, which is ridiculous. Just watch the behavior of the tree. It'll grow in a way that it shades itself and cools itself. This stuff has been out here in the full sun all summer long, and it looks pretty good. Guavas, almonds, figs, even a loquat out here. Loquat, just full sun. And then everything stacked in the back is nice and cool. So I can guarantee you, if we took some of these plants that are back here where it's nice and cool, right? We got some of these little bananas. Little bananas here, some little bananas everywhere, right? Let's say we took one of these bananas that's been sitting here in this position, growing well. It's got a certain amount of shade, it's got a certain amount of humidity, it's got a certain amount of light, it's got a certain amount of breeze. It's very acclimated to this spot right here. So let's say I take this, step one, I take this home and I put it in my car. Well, there goes your first stress, because first thing you've done is you've unplugged it from the watering system. It's used to a certain amount of water over here at a certain time period. They get acclimated to things. They get used to things just like you do. You eat breakfast every morning. If you water these guys every day and feed them at a certain time period, then they're going to get used to that also. So now this plant, this banana plant, is very used to my yard, and it's very used to this little spot in my yard. Okay, so even if I moved it over a couple more feet into the sun, it's probably going to cook it right now, because we want to wait till it cools down a little bit more towards October, right? Now, if I took this plant, which is considered a full sun plant, banana is considered full sun plant. If I took this plant, this little baby one especially, and I planted this one in the full sun right now, taking it home from a nursery, it looks great. I take it home, you're probably going to kill this thing. You're probably going to kill it within a couple days, maybe even within a couple hours, because it's been very much used to this situation here. Okay, so what would I do if I bought this banana tree? Well, I would buy this banana tree and I would take it home, and I would ask the person how much they watered it and what time they watered it. And I would water it at about the same time, about the same rate. I would also try to find a position in my yard that was very similar to how this was sitting in their yard, especially in the tropical nurseries, because we've got all these nice little microclimate pockets set up for ourselves. You do not have that. So when you take yours home, yours are not going to perform like ours perform. These things are going to cook, especially if you put them out in the full sun, especially right now in August, especially when it's a very small plant. Now, how could I get by with planting a banana plant right now? Well, you're going to have to pick a bigger one for sure if you want to do that. So you'd want to pick one that's a little bit bigger, one that's more like this one. This one's got a lot of beef to it. It's got some little pups coming onto it. Nice big pot, so I know it's got a big root system. It's got dual emitters on this one, so it's getting plenty of water. It's in nice compost, which is well draining, which allows me to water it all the time. Now, if you'll look up this thing, you'll see that the trunk is pretty much in the shade until you get to the top, and you got that wonderful canopy that's just being blasted up there in the full sun, which is okay because it's nice and cool up there. But you'll see that the trunk and everything on this is in perfect condition, absolutely perfect condition. And I know you guys struggle with bananas because I see them. So they are not exactly a full sun plant. They are a full sun plant if you've got a bunch of leaves covering a bigger plant. Then they're a full sun plant. Now, would I plant one of these? Yeah, I'd plant one of these, but more towards October when it gets a little bit cooler. Also knowing that you've got winter protection coming on and that you're going to have to protect this one from a freeze. Whereas you're probably not going to have to protect a little bit of a larger banana plant because you know it's at least going to come back from the pups. So these things cook, guys. If you take them from an environment that is really nice, like we have these things set up on, because it takes this type of environment to grow these type of plants. So we've done all the work. We've gotten the yard up exactly how we want it so that we can grow and we can nurse some of these smaller plants that you may not be able to. So buying larger plants is definitely definitely good advice for you guys. If you could buy, you know, 10 gallon and up, 10 gallon, 15 gallon, 25 gallon. It's not that you're buying a more expensive tree, it's that you're buying one that's probably going to survive, because these trees are expensive and there's no guarantees on them in especially tropical nursery world, because we know half the people are going to take these home and kill them and not plant them right. So you really have to be aware of what you're doing and what you're buying and what time period you're buying, what nursery you're at, what kind of sunscreen do they have up? Do they have protection right now? Do they have it in the full sun? Well, if they have it in the full sun, then it could probably be put right back into the full sun. Some of the plants I have out there on the patio, those could go out in the full sun because they've been sitting out in the full sun this whole entire time. But I guarantee you, I could take one of these bananas and I can kill it in less than an hour by putting it in a hot, rock, dry yard that has no humidity, no breeze coming through. I mean, there's so much humidity here, it's like a swamp cooler. So even when the breeze blows through, I got all that extra humidity, okay? So you can have this too. You just have to be aware of what you're doing and what you're buying, where you're buying from. Get all the information you can from them. If they're selling you stuff in the middle of the summer, then you need to take it home, and even if they tell you to plant it, you need to just keep it in a pot. Don't plant June, July, August, September. Those are very hot months. Things will die on you, just like they will from December 20th till the end of January. Those are time periods to skip also. So you can still buy, just make sure you keep things in pots. Keep them in the pots, keep them in the shade, and get them ready for fall when it comes. You don't want them to look in horrible condition when fall comes. You want them to be at their best. So you have to consider that a yard like this that's at pretty much maximum level, your plants might decline a little bit, okay? Now if you've got some that are sitting at a nursery where everything's out in the full sun and everything's kind of burnt up out in a parking lot and it looks terrible and the leaves are burnt, then when you take that home, it's probably going to look better. It's probably going to get better. It's not going to go through any kind of transplant shock. But from my experience, everything that I bring home from a nursery goes through the reverse. It goes through reverse transplant shock. So it just jumps out of the ground as soon as I bring it home, because now it's in this jungle, this forest, it's got all these other trees around. So it's very, very important, you guys, when you buy trees, to know what you're buying, who you're buying them from. You got to know the plant. You got to know where the plant is sitting in the yard. You got to know how long it's been here in Arizona. You got to know how much water they've been giving it, how much sun they've been giving it, how much humidity that it gets. How much of a breeze does it get? Does it get morning sun or afternoon sun? Is it sitting under a nice tree at their house and then you bring it home and put it in the full sun? Like, these are all factors to consider that you're doing with a living plant. So think about it more as a living object instead of a plant. Think of it more like a pet, guys. Think about it more like your dog, okay? That way you're gonna feed and water these things a lot more if you think about them that way. They're gonna give you what you give them, basically. So if you give them poor water and poor food, well then don't expect results. Don't expect all these crazy fruits that we get out of these yards, because we do a lot of work into the research on how to keep them alive. Because first off, I'm not a plant killer. So, I mean, look at this sugar apple. Beautiful sugar apple back here. It's basically in the full shade. Let's call it full shade. There's another one sitting right next to it. Another sugar apple. If I drug these even a couple feet out of here, these things would fry because they're so used to where they're at. So what I would have to do is, if I wanted to put these in the full sun someday, is I would have to kind of drag them out about 6 inches at a time, about 6 inches, wait a week, 6 inches, wait a week, 6 inches, wait a week, and get it more used to full sun, because this is kind of more of an understory plant, like an avocado. You can do an avocado like that too, but you got to start them underneath everybody else and let them kind of grow out into the sun. So I'm going to go over here and I'll show you a pretty big avocado. It's in the full sun now, but it didn't start that way. So it has a lot to do with your acclimation period. I'll show you a really good example. You see this avocado tucked down underneath this mango? It's basically in the full shade. This one is getting a little bit more sun, but it's basically in the full shade too. We'll call it that. So will they just exist in full shade? Well, no. So let's go over here. And let's see if I can get to the back of this avocado. because this one is in the full sun. It is back there. It is right there. Don't think I can get a better view, but it's about 15 feet tall, so it's out there in the full sun. So yes, it will do it, but it won't do it immediately. It might take a couple years. You see this solar aspect? You see how this kind of light's all dappling in here? They've gotten used to this. Do you see this? Do you see the light aspect? That's what I want you to look at, is the light aspect. You see how the sun's going through some leaves, being blocked by others. Tell you, that mango's stunning back there. So yeah, they'll all get used to it eventually, but you can't expect them to right away. And now is not a good time to plant. I mean, you can buy, but you better keep it in a good spot like they have it in. Otherwise, it's probably not going to make it. All right, guys, that is it real quick on acclimation of fruit trees to Arizona. Don't be bummed out if you have a couple trees that might fry a little bit. It's just part of the process. All right, guys, thank you for watching.